Do you guys want to hear a first world problem? I can't find my AirPods, and I'm really upset about it. They've been missing since the end of July, so a while now, and I did the whole find my iPhone thing. They're somewhere here in the house. It has caused me to do more cleaning in hopes that I'll just like lift up that pair of jeans and there they'll be. But it's getting increasingly upsetting, especially when I'm like doing things like editing podcasts or again with the laundry. I like to listen to my audiobooks while I do laundry. So I want to do a poll. DM me on Instagram or email me hi@thecheermomblog.com. When do I throw in the towel? When do I just count them as lost and move on with my life? I'm not sure when that cutoff is for things like $250 earbuds, Apple accessories. So, what do you think? What should I do? Cuz I'm very upset. I have this pair of headphones that's like you plug them in with the little dongle thingy, but I got all tangled up in them today. I'm telling you guys, first world problems. Okay, today I am talking with two amazing people, Coach Brian Kula and Coach Kelcey Finn with Kula Sports Performance. And these people have impressive resumes. So they work with all kinds of athletes with their strength and conditioning. Coach Kula has over 24 years of experience in coaching and track and field coaching and football coaching and sports performance coaching. He has coached D1 athletes, Olympians, and pro athletes like, first round draft pick NFL players like Christian McCaffrey. Coach Kelcey worked as a strength and conditioning coach for the University of Arkansas diving team and has also worked with dozens of Olympians, including Olympic gymnasts. So these people know what they're talking about when they talk about strength and conditioning and injury prevention as it relates to cheer athletes. They talk to us about how our athletes can do exercises that will help them tumble better, tumble faster, and be stronger in their stunts, like throwing higher baskets. They have broken down the science of it, and now they are offering these programs to athletes. In fact, they work with cheer athletes all over the country. They are the exclusive strength training provider of cheer athletics nationwide, and they offer their services to multiple programs. So check them out at kulasp.com. My favorite part of the interview is when they say athletes who cheer. Oh, couldn't have said it better. All right, one thing to remember is that this is not medical advice and should not substitute for a conversation with your athlete's doctor or medical professionals. Thank you all for being part of this community. You can join it in a bigger way and you can help out the podcast by leaving a review. They mean so much. They legitimize this show in front of lots of platforms. And so if you have that purple podcast icon on your phone or you're part of a podcast community, please consider leaving a review for the Cheer Mom podcast. You can also join us in Facebook at the Cheer Mom Hive. It's a private Facebook group that is a positive, uplifting, and resourceful place for cheer parents. And then don't forget about the cheermomblog.com. There's all kinds of tips in there, like pre-practice snack ideas, a playlist that will get your athlete pumped up for practice or competition day, and lots of other things like how to keep your athlete's uniform clean and how to prepare for those big travel trips that are always closer than you think. Let's get into my conversation with Coach Brian Kula and Coach Kelcey Finn of Kula Sports Performance.
All the moms in the world, let's chat it up. We're talking competitions, uniforms, and all of the above. It's the Cheer Mom, yes, the Cheer Mom podcast. Cheer Mom, yes, the Cheer Mom podcast. Cheer Moms, your podcast is on.
We're going to talk about all things conditioning and cross training. You guys have worked with some of the most elite athletes. So athletes from D1 colleges, pro athletes. I actually happened to be in the same building as you one time when I think I saw an Olympic medal being paraded around from one of your athletes. So you have quite the impressive resumes. And so, what made you take an interest in cheerleading? How did you get into the cheer world?
Well, I think I'm not sure if we were seeking cheerleader or if cheerleading kind of sought us out. Honestly, we've been in the sports performance space for a long time, and our relationship with one of the CA owners kind of brought us into the building where we were more exposed to cheerleading, and kind of realized that cheerleaders are athletes and they move just like the other athletes that we worked with, and thought we could really help them in performance and in health and injury prevention and all those things. And so we kind of did the deep dive. I should say Kelcey here did the deep dive of diving into the programming for an athlete that cheers, and how we could really help the sport. And so that quickly kind of spun up all the way to the kind of the corporate level with CA, and then all of a sudden we were neck deep in with cheerleading. So it's been a really fun ride. We love it. It's definitely provided some opportunities for us, and I think that we're helping in that regard for the athletes to see a benefit from what we have to offer. So I think that's kind of the short answer of how we got involved in cheerleading.
I love what you said about athletes who cheer. Can we just take a minute and everyone's like applauding in their cars listening? It's athletes who cheer, not girls who wear skirts, athletes who cheer.
Well, that was my experience. Knowing that we were going to start training all the cheerleaders here at Denver, for me coming into that situation, and it was super important to me to take the time to observe the sport, to get to know it, to get to know the coaches that were here and to build relationships with them, and also to start building relationships with the athletes that were here. And I remember one night walking into my first practice over there, just across the building, and my jaw being on the floor, just watching the stunts, the tumbling, and even the energy that the coaches bring to practice, and watching how the athletes respond. Chills from moment number one. It was incredible. So that, it inspired, coming from a collegiate background where cheer is even underserved there. There's cheer programs that have to go and seek outside of their colleges in order to get strength and conditioning programs that are legitimate for them. And coming from that background, and whenever I got placed into the position that I'm in now, it was, we are going to be the premier strength and conditioning. We're going to make it elite. So we're
I
allowed to
love
make.
that. So you guys kind of fell into cheerleading. Tell me about what your first observations were. You go to a cheer practice, you mentioned the energy, but as athletic trainers and as people who have observed multiple sports, what were your observations for cheerleading?
They're really good at counting to eight.
Yeah, we we wonder if those kids can count further than that. I even go as far as to say they skip a lot of numbers too, because it's not
Yeah,
even like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like 1, 3,
yeah,
5. So it's
yeah,
like don't leave those other numbers out, kids.
right. No, no. All joking aside, I mean, definitely kind of a eye-opening experience just to the level of athleticism and the kind of the requirements that go into it. Like for Kelsey and I mean, we went down to the world's competition, and it's neat to sit there and go, we can see similar movement patterns, similar energy systems in cheerleading as we do with all the other sports that we work with. So for us, it really wasn't like how do we train cheerleaders? It's how do we train athletes? And we saw, so I think the aha moment was when we saw that there were similar movements in the practices and the gym that we saw. It was going to be pretty easy for us to program for that and make it, and give some enhancements.
What about you, Kelsey? What were your observations?
I come from a heavy biomechanical background. Just the things that I see, it's just very scientific. Looking at the kids' posture, for example, the way that they stand. Why do they stand the way that they do? Is that from their tumbling? Is that from the overhead positions that they have to press into? So just watching the way that they move, and from there, working backwards sometimes, and from backwards back to forwards, of what effect do we want to have, especially whenever we take the kids to the weight room. what are we trying to affect? What aspects of their sport are we trying to have an impact on? How do we keep the kids safe and healthy? So that's what I see.
So you mentioned weight room, and that takes me to my next question. Great segue. You're already an amazing co-host. uh, it takes me to my next question because we see our athletes doing conditioning with their coaches. They'll be doing push ups or sit ups or what have you during practice. And I think when considering all of the commitments that our kids and frankly that we as parents have just in cheerleading, we have at least 3 practices a week. There's usually a tumbling class and then private lessons on top of that. And then we have this introduction of you guys, and don't take this the wrong way, but it's like, okay, another thing that they have to do. Like, why isn't conditioning enough? Why can't that be enough? So what's your case for taking them to the weight room, and why should more programs and more parents consider doing cross training with a program like yours?
We're here to kind of shine a light on how to develop the athlete properly. We're not cheer coaches. Like, I would never want to go up there and try to teach a kid how to do a skill. It's just not in my wheelhouse. So what's in our wheelhouse is athletic development, injury prevention, stability, mobility things where we can really help the athletes stay healthy. And I think that's one of the biggest things. There's the performance side of it, where they might be better at tumbling, better at the skills because of what we do. But there's also the major component of it's one of the higher sport injury environments that we've been around in regards to, kids getting hurt. And so if we can help them stay in practices more or return from an injury faster, then we're definitely checking some boxes that, push-ups and sit-ups at practice aren't covering. And frankly,
Sure.
when we're looking at the appropriate energy systems and how an athlete should be developed for that sport, some of the things that the coaches are doing, not and no fault to theirs, they just don't know any better, are not exactly
Mhm.
what's appropriate for the adaptation that we're looking for to get them going as an athlete. And so again, Kelsey can probably speak a little bit more to that technical side of what that looks like, but I think it's so drastically different. And that's partly why I don't think strength and conditioning people have been in front of cheer athletes, because the coaches have had to take it all on themselves. And so they're kind of, for lack of a better word, they're making stuff up as they go. They're doing things that their coaches did with them, and body weight exercises and stuff are all very good. But if you want to have, progressive overload, you have to have some weight equipment. You have to have apparatuses to be able to do those kind of things. And that's what we've brought to it. So it's just it's not, do we think it's better? Of course we do. I mean, what the coaches are doing, it's not like they're animals and doing completely wrong things with them. But what we're trying to do is change that culture a little bit and say, here's how you should warm up, here's how you should condition, or here's what you shouldn't be doing because we're the experts in that field. Let us take care of that for you.
Hey, it's me again, interrupting the episode for a quick plug for our podcast sponsor today, the Cheer Collection. If you guys have not seen the Cheer Collection, it is a line of cheer themed jewelry with inspirational quotes that only we in the cheer community know about, like hit zero, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and the newest release, we can, we will, we must. They're available on bracelets, rings, and more. It's beautiful style for every cheer enthusiast. And when you enter the coupon code CheerMomPod, that's CheerMomPod, like short for podcast, you get 10% off of your order. So go to thecheercollection.com and check it out. It's a great gift for holiday gift season, for your coaches, for your athlete, for your team mom, or even a little something for yourself. Yeah, that's great. So, what are some technical aspects, Kelsey?
Brian did an excellent job outlining. So he spoke to a lot of the points that I was going to speak to myself.
Sorry.
No, you did a great job. I love that. It's all 100, the emoji. But so whenever I think of like the technical aspects, I think that what I want to start by saying first is that, he said a lot of cheer coaches they're doing some really great things. What I think about is I feel like a lot of the conditioning that they do at cheer should actually be supplemental to what they're doing with us. So, we here in our program right now, we get the kids once a week for 30 minutes. And whenever we think of the dosage required in order to create stability, so use the flyer, for example, our flyers. They've got to be able to hit all these positions, scorpions, bows and arrows, the flexibility that's required in their hips, their knees, even into their thoracic spine, their shoulders. What we can run into is something called hypermobility. And there's a certain amount of mobility required for them to hit their positions, but how do we make sure that they can still transfer force across their muscles into their bones to create movement? How do we make sure that, while they're doing these movements, not just the flyer, but even the bases and back spotters, even through tumbling, that they're strong enough to hit those positions and execute the movements of the sport safely? So while it is the stuff that they're doing in practice, we'll call it generally good. What we do here is just it's on a different level. They're in front of a sports performance specialist who has equipment, who has the eye for what we're looking for, and also knows the intent behind what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah,
So speak
and
to it.
maybe to summarize, I mean, it's kind of the difference between, like in track and field, we use a term called mindless running, or just other sports. We don't want to just do mindless running. We're checking the box that we did some level of conditioning. We made them tired. That was a good workout because they were sore the next day. We just come from it at a totally different angle and approach of keeping the athletes fresh and healthy, and safe is like our, and how you do that takes a lot of experience. It takes a lot of knowledge. It takes a lot of science. And that's what Kelsey's, saying is that it just takes a whole different approach. It's not that what the coaches are doing is wrong, but I think their cheer in general is maybe finally seeing that what we can do can actually enhance the sport. And so, it doesn't have to all be done in house. There's not one NFL football coach that runs their weight room or that runs the team for conditioning. So they've hired an expert
Mhm.
to do that. So to kind of legitimize the sport, we get them for 30 minutes. We'd like to have them more often, in that regard. But the coaches really shouldn't even be expected to do that. That's not their area of expertise. So hopefully that kind of makes sense in summarizing why it's valid and what's important about it.
Fantastic. So, what advice would you give to somebody who's not a cheer athletics gym that is looking to have a multidiscipline service like yours in their program? How do they begin to have those conversations and know what to ask for?
Sure. Yeah, I mean we're a full service building here and a business that's growing and expanding, and we're happy to talk to anybody that wants to gain more knowledge about what we do and how we can help their environment or their clientele. So I mean I think just a direct connection to us, to reach out. I mean we have a general info email, info@kulasp.com, where anybody could reach in and ask questions.
Okay, so you were talking about injury prevention, and cheer is second to football in concussion injuries. We know that as a firm statistic, but what are some common causes of cheer specific injuries beyond concussions?
I'll let Kelsey tackle this one. There's plenty of them. I mean,
Great.
the female athlete is definitely set up for injury. Really, no matter what sport that we're talking about. I think the elevation of the athletes in cheer, some of the concussion, is more prevalent. But there's also ankle and knee injuries all over the place, and a lot of that has to do with the female anatomy. And then, of course, the training behind that of how to prevent that. So, Kelsey, why don't you talk a little bit about
This could be an essay answer. So let's start at paragraph one.
Go for
So
it. We still got plenty of time.
perfect. So like he was saying, the female athlete is predisposed, from our hips, the way that our hips connect to our knees down to our ankles. So if we start like with the foot all the way up to the hip, it was probably a couple months ago, we watched a kid doing a tumbling pass. She started to land wrong. So the ankle responded and it threw the knee out just a little bit. And
Hmm.
so,
See that all the time, every single day. I see that.
that?
all the time. I mean, so to correlate it to the weight room, stuff that we're trying to help control is if we can strengthen the structure around it, and if we can over time, teach through the weight room and the things that we do there, teach the ankle how to respond all the way up to the hip. There's different methods that you can use, from the hips all the way up to the lower back. You know, I had mentioned earlier, the posture that the kids hold, even just standing. Knees are locked out, so you're going to see a curve in the lumbar spine that goes all the way up to rounded shoulders, for example. well, that lower back curvature. There's, and even like the tumbling that they do, the back walkovers, there's, and also like bases and back spotters pushing into that overhead position. Are they engaging their core? So there's a
Mhm.
list: ankle, knee, hip, lower back, and then all the way up to,
Shoulders.
yeah, shoulders. So again, the holding those tumbling positions as they do their passes, and again pressing overhead. Uh, are we strong enough in those positions to help stabilize the shoulder musculature? And then we can get into the elbows too. I've seen some elbow injuries, and again from tumbling. And let's see, neck all the way up to concussion with the head, right? So concussion, it is what it is. It's one of those injuries that are, we don't want to see that happen. But even with strength and conditioning, we found that if we can create neck mobility in the correct ranges of motion, as well as supplement strength with it, there are some instances where that can help mitigate instances of concussion. With all injury, it's hard to prevent injury. Stuff happens all the time. It's hard to keep a kid from landing wrong 100% of the time. It just happens. But what we try to do here at KSP is make it hard for the kids to get hurt. And if they do get hurt, they come back much faster because they were strong.
Interesting. So, what I hear is for any athletes that are listening, doing core strengthening exercises doesn't just help your body to be prepared for wearing a two-piece uniform, it's actually going to help you keep your stunts up.
Yeah.
Yes,
I never
exactly.
really thought about core strength being a, a base centric exercise, and keeping, we talk about flyers and flexibility and the mobility that's needed, like you said earlier, but for bases and back spots to have the strength not just in their arms but in their core to be able to keep that flyer up, that's super interesting.
I mean, and there's more to it, but like the core force and power is going to transfer through the core through to the extremities. So think about whenever the bases, they'll press the fire up into their positions. They're engaging both lower body and upper body. So there's a certain amount of synchronization that has to travel through the core musculature. So if there's not stability there, maximal power output's not going to be there either. So we think about our baskets that we throw. How high do we want to throw our baskets? Are we strong enough for it?
Interesting. So are you speaking to athletes in this way, or and are they making that connection?
We I
Depends
yeah.
what age group.
Yep.
I
Yep.
saw a big smile.
Yeah.
I saw a big knowing smile. Tell me more about that.
I think, and again, Kelsey's the one more like boots to the ground, working with the athletes on a day to day basis. I was just going to add in that I think the word is resilient. What we're really trying to do is make a robust, resilient athlete that can handle all the demands of the sport, right? And so, even talking about like the core, I mean, the core, it's like if you were going to build a big, beautiful house, you wouldn't do it on a poor foundation. So no matter how strong your extremities are, your shoulders, the lower legs and the arms, if it's built on a poor foundation, you don't have any stability, and that house is going to blow over or get broke at some point. So that's what we're after, is just building that resiliency for the athlete. I think when we talk to the athletes, and again, she could probably say it better than I can, but the young athletes, you're not necessarily talking to them in that manner. You're keeping them engaged. You're making sure that they're, getting the most out of the training. I think as they get a little older, we do like to try to educate the athletes, because the more they know why they're doing something, the more buy-in you're going to have. The more buy-in you have, I can't remember exactly what the saying is, but if you love something, you're gonna work a lot harder at it, versus if you don't like it. And so once they understand that, hey, these people care about me, what we're doing isn't just to check a box and go home sweaty and tired. It's actually to help me do better at the thing that I like the most in life. Then, we're checking that box for sure for the athlete. So I definitely think, and I've heard Kelsey and her team, communicate that to the athletes of why we're doing something. Again, just to get that buy-in.
Yeah, very specific to the age group that we're in front of. So our number one rule in the weight room is, hey, let's make sure it's fun. Make sure it's fun. Let's make sure we're safe. So
Mhm.
as especially like with our youngest youth athletes, do they ask why we're doing what we're doing? Usually no. Very rarely. But like our level 6, our worlds team, like night number one, I spent 30 minutes straight multitasking between, trying to coach them, get them through their workout while being interrogated about why every single thing that we were doing and how many reps and why do I have to do this weight. But so the older kids, they will ask, and I love the question why. I love it, but being able to scale it forward or backwards depending on the age of the athlete, maturity level. you know if we really understand why we're doing what we're doing, if a 5-year-old ever did ask, I can relate that to them on their level. So I think that's important communication for buy-in, not just with the athletes, but with the coaches and the parents too.
So, do you have some examples of just some basic exercises that athletes can be working on at home or outside of the gym?
I could think of three to five, most basic movement patterns. If we can own a body weight squat, if we can, just owning movement patterns such as a push up. Can we do a push up without our lower back arching and our hips breaking? Can we come up, flat as a
I
board, right?
cannot.
Right. What I would,
Well,
so
then we're done with this
yeah.
podcast. No,
So
I'm kidding.
yeah,
I'm kidding.
this one's for the athletes.
Yeah.
At the root of what we do, we're trying to help the kids own those movement patterns. If we can squat well, if we can do a push up well, then we're gonna tumble better. We're gonna stunt higher. So it starts like with a foundation, just like with the house, right? So if I were to relate back, like what are a couple exercises someone could safely do at home? Do a body weight squat, do a great push up, a glute bridge, and a side plank. You're gonna check so many boxes with that.
Interesting. So I want to go back and we'll wrap it up with this. We were talking kind of at the beginning about athletes who are cheerleaders, and there's a lot of upheaval, I would say, about cheer being a sport and parents trying to shout from the rooftops, "Hey, we're athletes too." I have my daughter is a college cheerleader, and I watch them struggle to get resources even. So from your experience in dealing and training elite level athletes, what are your thoughts on that? And how can we be talking about cheer more like the sport that it is?
I think that I mean I've been in education a long time, and so I was an athletic director. I oversaw cheer and palms, teams for several years, and kind of heard that noise and heard that. I think a lot of it is just lacks some education of what it is. The name inherently doesn't lend itself to help the situation much.
Mm.
I almost wish it was called something different because I mean, is there cheerleading involved? Of course there is, but the activity itself, the movement, the patterning, the how it's done. I mean, it's so tightly closed to like gymnastics, which is a very recognized sport, internationally. And so I just think that there's some misunderstanding, no education around it. I mean, go to the worlds one time and watch some of those routines, and it'll change your mind on the level of athleticism. And in regards to sport, I think that the Olympic Committee has spoken. They're trying to push it forward as an exhibition sport in the 2028 Olympic Games. So if that doesn't lend some credibility to the fact that it's a sport, then I don't know. I don't know what else will. We just seem to look at it from for us. Whether it's recognized as a sport or not as a sport really doesn't matter to us. It's more about the athlete, being involved in human movement, and so we're kind of just that's us. We're a human performance business, and so it's been validated to us because we've seen it firsthand. And I think a lot of people just haven't been to a big cheer competition to see what that looks like, and we're excited to be a part of it.
Again, just really well answered by Brian. I'm not sure that I would really add anything other than, just affirm. Like I referenced earlier, being at the collegiate level, just the lack of resources for our cheer and palm
Mhm.
teams, right? And, you know, again, referencing what I said earlier, going to that first practice and having my mind blown and just completely falling in love with the sport. Like, it's beautiful. There's so much that's going on. There's nothing else like it in all the sporting realm. So, I mean, I feel the frustration too. Like, we see our kids. I love our kids that we have here, and to know that they're having to fight that battle, the parents are having to fight that battle, is frustrating. Especially, seeing what all is put into it, and even trying to do a cartwheel myself. Like, it's very, very deep, right? And so This again,
Amen. I'm
of
still trying. My husband tries to do cartwheels at home, and it's
Oh,
almost took us out.
and it's, my only other thing I would add is like what makes it a sport, all the athletic qualities are involved with it, the coaching, but also like, there's competitions. If I think that at that point you have to take a look at what qualifies a sport as a sport. There's competitions, that are scored depending on the level of athleticism that's demonstrated in a routine. So if that's not enough, goodness.
Hey, preach it, sister. We let's get before whatever committee together. We can make it happen.
I would think that if they bring it into the Olympic, scene, that it would definitely catch some momentum.
There's that, and I think like the cheer documentary on Netflix, man, that's done a lot
Mhm.
for the sport too, to help raise that awareness, that
Absolutely.
education piece that we've talked about. It's just going to take time, but I think it's coming. It's coming very quickly too.
Yeah, and there's no real difference between like the sport of cheer versus a lot of other sports that don't get the attention, they don't get the funding, they don't get the resources. I mean, I was a track and field athlete, and it always seemed a little bit unfair. We're putting in all the same work as all the other athletes, and yet
Mhm.
not as many scholarships, not as many opportunities. The professional scene is very limited. But at the end of the day, I think athletes have to follow what they love. And what I've seen out of cheer athletes is they're very passionate about what they do. Moms are passionate,
Mhm.
athletes are passionate, dads are passionate. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, are they going to make money or be on ESPN? Who knows, but they love what they do, and if we can help support in that, in our role to make that a better experience, that's kind of why we're here.
Love that. Thank you so much to you both for being here, for lending your advice and your expertise to the cheer world. I can't wait to see what's next for you guys and for cross training and strengthening in the cheer space. I think it's going to help the sport a lot. So thank you for all of your effort in making that happen.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.